So UFC Perth is officially in the books, and Carlos Ulberg just absolutely starched Dominick Reyes, as I predicted. That was hard to watch, man. Listen, I'm glad that I got my prediction right. I'm excited that we kind of have this fresh contender that's just been rattling off wins, right? I think that's 9 straight wins in a row for Carlos Ulberg. So I'm excited that we have this contender. I enjoy watching Carlos Ulberg fight, but that was hard to watch, man, right? I feel like we all were kind of rooting for Dominick Reyes low-key, right? Even if you were picking Ulberg, you were hoping that Dom Reyes could somehow turn back the hands of time and go out there and kind of, let's just be real, land a lucky left hand, because Dominick Reyes is just way too basic, right? And we're going to discuss the fight, kind of what I saw in there, because I think that this is big picture when we are talking about Carlos Ulberg. This wasn't just a win over. You can't just be like, oh, well, Dominick Reyes, he's going to go out there and knock out Carlos Ulberg, and then Ulberg flatlines Dominick Reyes, and now you're like, oh, well, Dominick Reyes didn't win, so he's washed, and Ulberg, this isn't a good win, and you can't do that, right? We all knew Dominick Reyes was on a resurgence, rattled off 3 wins in a row, again, not against the greatest of competition, but Dustin Jacoby, he's just flatlined a couple of the Brazilian prospects, right? So he's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence himself. Anthony Smith, on paper, Anthony should have won that fight, but Reyes pulled that one off, right? And then he's coming off of, the nasty KO over Nikita Krylov, but Carlos Ulberg is a different beast. He's a different beast, right? And top to bottom, I got to be honest, man. Like, I don't want to be negative Nancy this morning, but was it just me, or was this one of the most, pathetic UFC cards of all time? I'm not talking about the fights that happened, but the lead up to this card was atrocious. It was absolutely atrocious. And over the past several years we've had where the UFC's kind of hit this, new gear of being super mainstream and everything, this might have been one of the worst buildups to a UFC card I've ever seen. Like, honestly, right? And honestly, back in the day, obviously, when it's not super mainstream, those are different times. But in the new era of UFC, am I missing something? There was almost no excitement around this event whatsoever. Fights were falling out left and right. We had 16 fights, ended up with 12. It was a disaster, but the bottom line was, I thought the card was pretty entertaining. Thought it was pretty entertaining. Enough of the rambling, man. Let's hop straight into the main event, because I got to talk about this, because what we saw in this fight was incredibly alarming for everybody else in the light heavyweight division, okay? And what I mean by alarming is a good thing on the side of Carlos Ulberg. This guy's a massive problem. That's what I put in the thumbnail, because it is the truth. Listen, I understand that Carlos Ulberg has been in some fights to where, it's kind of a pick and poke battle, right? And it's not the most entertaining thing, but what do we see with really sharp, dangerous counter strikers in the UFC, especially at light heavyweight, right? People talk about, well, Magomed Ankalaev is boring and his fights aren't super entertaining. Now, why is that? That's because when guys would chase after him, like Johnny Walker did in the rematch with Ankalaev, like Ion Kuntilaba did in the rematch with Ankalaev, you get sniped. You get knocked the hell out. So you're afraid to open up, right? So you're kind of in this back and forth, like, well, if I take a chance here, I'm probably going to get knocked the hell out. Because guys like Carlos Ulberg, guys like Magomed Ankalaev, they are sharp-shooting counter-strikers, man, with legit countering instincts. And I think the 2 best in the weight class when it comes to that. Alex Pineda's up there as well. But right now, what I just saw from Carlos Ulberg was absolutely terrifying in this weight class, man. And I think that, honestly, what we're seeing right now, give him the next title shot. Absolutely give him the next title shot. He didn't sit on the sidelines like a lot of the guys at lightweight are doing. Dana, Hunter, please pick me. Give me a title shot. Please pick me. Carlos Ulberg said no. The guy that's on the resurgence has dangerous power in that left hand. Dominick Reyes has rattled off 3. Give me a main event in Perth. I'm going to go out there and beat this guy. And boy, did he. He was frustrating Reyes. The first jab that Carlos Ulberg landed, I knew the fight was over. I knew it was over because he was picking and poking. His movement was on point. You could just see when a guy is just on, man. Like, Reyes would throw stuff and Ulberg was getting clear out of the way. It wasn't even like when Reyes would try to throw a kick or something. It wasn't even touching Carlos Ulberg. It wasn't like it was being blocked. Wasn't even grazing him. He was getting out of the way of absolutely everything. Leg kicks, head kick. Ulberg was dialed in, man. He slid back out of range, frustrated Reyes because you could see it, right? Reyes is like, okay, I'm falling behind here. This guy's fast. He's getting in and out of range. I can't find him. And then you're going to start to open up, which is exactly what Carlos wanted. And you overextended. Boom. Knocked him out. Beautiful jab, slipped right off, cut the angle, nasty right hand right off the side, man. Absolutely picture perfect performance by Carlos Ulberg. And I see people doing this. They were out there, oh, well, Dominick Reyes is washed now, right? He has no chin. This making up all the excuses when I saw so many people picking Dominick Reyes, especially on X. Dominick Reyes, it's his time, man. The title run starts now. And, this is what I feared, man. I was like, look, I'm rooting for Reyes in a way, but at the end of the day, Ulberg's a different kind of striker. He is. And, people were ripping on Ulberg because of the Jan Blachowicz fight. And I was a little bit as well. I'm like, Jan could have won that fight. It was very, very close. And then I thought about something last night after the fight, and I was like, wait a second here. Jan Blachowicz had a super competitive 25-minute fight with Magomed Ankalaev where he arguably won. I still thought Ankalaev won, right? But a lot of people, that was close, man. It was a super close fight where Jan obliterated his legs. It was close is the bottom line. Goes out there, has a super close fight with Alex Pineda as well. Right? And then Jan Blachowicz actually was the guy that kind of halted the Dominick Reyes hype when he was able to knock him out. So what is my point is people that were shitting on Carlos Ulberg for having this, lackluster performance against Jan Blachowicz. Well, look what Jan Blachowicz has done against some of the top guys in the weight class. The two guys, Pineda was the champion. He's fighting for the title. Ankalaev's the champion now. And now we're talking about Carlos Ulberg, who was able to win a close fight over him. So that loss that I feel like people were kind of holding on to, I don't think it's as big of a deal as what people think. Jan Blachowicz is a tough fight, right? He doesn't open up to give you those countering opportunities, and that's what this came down to. That's exactly what I said coming into this fight is exactly what happened. Dominick Reyes is super basic. He's got a left hand and a left kick, and that's it. That's it. Right? And if you don't chase after him, he's not going to knock you out. Carlos Ulberg doesn't chase. He sets things up. Fought behind the jab beautifully. He saw everything that was going in there, and he was locked in. The minute that first jab landed, I'm like, it's over. It's over. And he was getting in and out of range so fast, man. He looked so dangerous. He did. He looked absolutely dangerous, right? And to go out there and flatline Dominick Reyes, like, it's not that super impressive because we have seen that the chin is clearly a problem for Dominick Reyes, and I'm concerned about that, right? And, it just feels kind of dirty in a way because the UFC's like, we'll build you back up, and then we're going to put you in there against a dangerous sharpshooter. But we've seen that with Ulberg. If you come after this guy, you're getting knocked out. And if you don't come after him, then we get into these kind of, back and forth, technical, where I'm going to throw a leg kick, you're going to throw a leg kick, and we get into these close back and forth exchanges. But when you recklessly chase these guys, man, you're getting knocked out. You're getting knocked out. Right now, I like that Ulberg was active. He absolutely deserves the next title shot, but we get into a little bit of tricky territory here, right? Because this was an amazing performance to go out there and do that to Reyes. It was. It absolutely was. Right, but now it's like, well, Ulberg, don't give him a microphone. I've said that before, right? When he gets on the mic and tries to talk some shit, it's bad. It's bad, right? Ulberg, don't say much, man. Just show up to the dance and do your thing, right? Because this is what we get. Right, he's got some nasty leg kicks, good front kicks, good timing, and he fights just like those city kickboxing guys. That, like the stance like Izzy, right, long, bladed, in and out movement, fights behind a good jab. But the difference with Ulberg and those other guys is he's got the power. He's got the power, and he's got the countering instincts, man. So it was a beautiful performance over Dominick Reyes. Don't take anything away from Carlos just because you're, salty that Reyes lost. We all are in a way, right? Even if you picked Ulberg, I feel like we all kind of wanted to see Dom, kind of make this thing happen. But Ulberg's legit, man. He's absolutely legit. And when he came into the UFC in the very beginning, I got to pat myself on the back because this was one of the guys I said to keep an eye on when I first started the channel. Right, over at City Kickboxing was, doing a lot of stuff over in King of the Ring. Super dangerous, man. Super dangerous on the feet. He had one loss, which was to Kennedy and Zechkuta, where he was beating his ass, got tired, and got finished. And then we haven't seen the gas tank problem be a thing since. So shout out to Carlos Ulberg for fixing the problems. Right, and if you think about the Jan Blachowicz fight, even though it was super close, people felt that like Jan won that. Jan has had a close fight with some of the top guys in the weight class, man, right? And I feel like that's something that I didn't even think of until last night. So now we're in tricky territory, though, for Ulberg because I think he's flying into Vegas, wants to be the backup fighter, right? It sounds like Hunter Campbell and the UFC are probably going to give him the next shot, maybe. But here's the problem. If Magomed Ankalaev wins, Ankalaev has some options, right? Because Yuri Prochazka versus Khalil Roundtree, that has the aura to it to where whoever wins that fight is probably going to be a crazy fight or it's going to be an impressive finish. And that's what people are going to be talking about, right? And then people are going to be like, we want to see Roundtree versus, Ankalaev or Pineda, or we want to see, unless Pineda wins, then, which I don't think he is. But the point is, depending on how that fight plays out is going to impact this thing for Carlos Ulberg. But at the end of the day, I feel like he's earned it, man. He's absolutely earned it. But like I said, it just becomes intriguing because if Yuri goes out there and gets a KO over Khalil, I just know people are going to be like, no, we want to see Yuri versus Ankalaev or something, And that's a crazy fight. But Carlos Ulberg has earned it. He's earned it. And him versus Ankalaev is super intriguing to me because it's two counter strikers. We've seen that Carlos Ulberg has good takedown defense. We've seen that he's a tricky guy. But again, I don't know how entertaining the fight would be because both of them are counter strikers. So when people are talking about how these guys aren't, going after it and, really pressing the action, that's because they're counter strikers. So that's what I was afraid of with this fight. But I knew at some point Ulberg was going to get ahead. He was going to frustrate Reyes. Reyes would try to close him down, and the speed and the timing of Ulberg would take over. So that's what I think we're looking at here is we're looking at the next title challenger. It was a great performance by Carlos Ulberg, man. The timing, the way he cut that angle, slipped off. He was seeing everything. He looked fast. He looked sharp. He went out there with a point to prove, like, I am going to earn the next title shot by putting a stamp on this thing and getting a first-round finish over Dominick Reyes. I thought it would happen in, I think I said, like, the third round, right? It would take some time. It would kind of be a slow fight. And then eventually Reyes would be like, okay, I'm behind. I'm going to have to take some chances. But I think he started to feel the presence early. Right? He noticed that's what happens, man, against these guys. You're getting kind of chipped away at from range, and you're like, I can't find them. And then you're like, okay, I gotta take a chance here, because if I don't, I'm just gonna get outpointed here. I'm gonna lose a decision. I'm gonna get picked apart. So you try to give yourself a chance, you extend into range, and you get knocked out. And that's what Ulberg did, set him up beautifully. Absolutely perfect finish here by Carlos Ulberg. He took no damage in this fight. And it's incredibly intriguing, man. Like I said, he's not, doesn't have all this aura, doesn't have like a huge name, right? He's a fun guy to watch. I enjoy watching him fight. Him versus, the winner of Pereira and Ankalaev is probably what the UFC is going to do next. After a performance like that, right? Reyes is kind of a name in the division. But like I said, man, I worry for Ulberg about that Yuri versus Roundtree fight, right? Because this fight just happened, and now we're talking a week later at 320. You just know that fight's going to be fireworks. And I could just see it now. If Ankalaev wins and Yuri gets an impressive KO, or, Roundtree starches Yuri, you mean to tell me that people aren't going to want to see that fight instead of Ulberg getting the shot? Right, but at this point, Ulberg has earned it. It's like Nasruddin Imavov. They put in their work. They're on crazy win streaks. Title shot for Imavov. Title shot for Carlos Ulberg. He's absolutely earned it. Him versus a guy like Ankalaev, or even, if Pereira was able to win it. Those are intriguing style matchups, man. I like watching Ulberg fight. He's a sharpshooter, and this is what happens when you open up on good counter strikers. It's kind of like, okay, do we want to play the pick and poke kind of game, and I'm just going to outscore you, I'm going to outsmart you, or do you get impatient, make a mistake, and I'm going to make you pay, and that's what happened. So great performance by Carlos Ulberg, getting a KO victory over Dominick Reyes. Biggest win of his career for sure, man. Was just lights out. Perfect performance. All right, Jimmy Crute versus Ivan Erslan. This went pretty much how I anticipated, and I feel like a lot of us did. Look, Erslan, there were a lot of people that were worried that this guy was gonna jack up some people's predictions, right? Because it felt like Jimmy Crute clearly had the edge on the ground, and we saw that when the fight hit the floor, right? He's got really good wrestling. Well, I should say he's got pretty decent wrestling, right? He's got decent jiu-jitsu skills. When you blend them together, that becomes a problem, especially in the heavier weight classes against guys that are subpar with the grappling, and that is Ivan Erslan, right? But on the feet, it felt like Erslan had an advantage, right? We saw early. It's almost like he felt that. He's like, okay, I can't get taken down. And that was a big red flag for me, was the fact that he was getting taken down by Navajo Stirling, who, by the way, has actually shown that he's actually a pretty solid grappler, right? So I feel like he's not just a striker as Navajo Stirling. So, maybe we got to give a little bit of slack to Erslan. But then you go out there against Jimmy Crute, who I feel like is definitely probably a better grappler than Navajo Stirling, takes him down, just bullies him into a submission, man. I don't even know how he finished that choke, but he absolutely bullied Ivan Erslan on the ground. On the feet, it was looking a little dicey because we know Crute's not particularly great there, not the most durable guy, but look, Erslan threw caution to the wind early. I feel like he knew if the fight hit the floor, it was going to be a problem. That's exactly what happened. Big win for Jimmy Crute because, for a guy that it felt like it was over just a few years ago, what is he, 29, 30 years of age, is back on track here, rattling off another one. Big victory for Jimmy Crute over Ivan Erslan, a guy that's just kind of there, right? Has some power, not very good on the ground. Very winnable fight for Jimmy Crute, but he went out there and did what he needed to do and got the submission victory. Bullied him into a submission, man. I don't know how he got him out of there with that. All right, Jenkins, Ramon, Tavares. I was wrong here. And the reason that I'm frustrated with this is because, yeah, obviously I got the pick wrong, so I'm salty. But Jack Jenkins looked very sharp in this fight, right? His boxing looked a little bit better than what I feel like we've seen before in fights prior, right? We know that he kicks like a mule. He's got some devastating kicks, but Ramon Tavares was coming up in weight here, right? And we often see that the lighter fighters that move up, they tend to have a technicality and a speed advantage, but when Ramon Tavares missed weight, moving up a weight class, pulling a Kelvin Gastelum, Brian Battle, these guys that want to miss weight after you move up a weight class, it's just a disgrace. I was like, well, that's not a good sign. That's not a good sign. He looked kind of like a Teletubby in there to me, man. He looked a little flabby, just looked a little, just kind of bloated up, right? And he was throwing the same shots over and over again. Jab, jab cross, little overhand left, crash you up against the fence, up, jab, jab cross. That's not enough to beat Jack Jenkins, right? And I feel like Ramon Tavares' boxing is pretty clean. It is. And I felt like he was going to be able to open up a little bit and land some shots on a guy that doesn't move his head and is just going to spam kicks, time the kicks. Right when he throws that kick to the body, boom, step in with a left hand. Throws that leg kick, step in with a left hand. We didn't see any of that from Ramon Tavares. And a lot of that was because Jack Jenkins just fought a good game plan, man. He was sticking and moving, blasting the kicks, mixing things up, forced some grappling exchanges here and there. So Jack Jenkins was the more well-rounded fighter here, right? I thought Ramon Tavares would come up. Right, his boxing is pretty decent. I thought that he would stick and move, right? He was landing some decent shots at times, right? Especially, I think it was, the third round he started to pour it on him a little bit. But the bottom line is Jack Jenkins was just a better fighter. His boxing looked better. Those kicks were nasty. And Ramon Tavares, not nearly enough output to go out there and try to steal one against Jack Jenkins, who's the guy that's established in the weight class. So I was disappointed in Ramon, man. Maybe I'm overrating what I think he's capable of, but I felt like this was a pretty winnable fight for him considering the speed and the boxing that he has, but Jack just didn't care, just blasting him with kicks all night long. Good performance by Jenkins. Jake Matthews, Neil Magny. Weird situation, right? Because I just saw this morning that I think Jake Matthews' management said that they are going to appeal this fight here, or this decision or whatever, because we get to the end of round number 1. It's a competitive first round. And it kind of reminded me of the Robbie Lawler-Ben Askren situation to where Jake Matthews has Neil Magny, I think it was, a mounted one-arm in guillotine, whatever the position was. And Neil Magny's arm is up, and then it just kind of fades out to the side, and the ref waves it off. And we got 1 second left here, right? And then the ref basically just kind of corrects his mistake. Magny goes back to the stool. Everything's moving on like, no, this fight wasn't stopped, right? Magny, the referee, everyone's acting like this didn't stop except for Jake Matthews. He thinks he won. He's parading around the octagon, right? All the emotion, all the energy that you're going to burn doing that, thinking that you just got basically the biggest win of your career over an established guy in this weight class who I think has the most wins in welterweight history, if I'm not mistaken, which, by the way, very underrated resume of Neil Magny at this point, right? Mike Malott, I think Jeff Neal, right? Jake Matthews now, Zaleski Dos Santos. He's got some wins, man. I think Robbie Lawler, right? So at the end of the day, this was a big win for Neil Magny to go out there, right? The adversity, early on, competitive second round as well. And then Matthews just kind of wilted, man. I'll just call it what it was. He just kind of wilted, and I feel like he burned so much energy and had that massive adrenaline dump, thought he won the fight. And the next thing you know, you're told that you got to go back out there and continue to fight here. So I feel like that's definitely something that needs to be brought up, man. That's definitely a factor. Right, you blow all this energy, you think you won the fight, and then the next thing you know, it's like, no, you actually didn't. We're just going to keep this thing going. And then the referee just kind of, corrected his mistake quietly, and Magny just carried on like nothing ever happened. Stood up, protested, went back to his stool, and then we came out for the next round. And Magny does what he does. Uses that range, not from the outside to stick and move, but to crash you up against the boards, right? Kind of, bully you in the clinch. It's exactly what we saw. And we was able to submit him, man. And I saw him when he got into that quarter Nelson position and cranked down. I was like, here comes a Darce. And that was a problem. It was a problem. Matthews faded, man, right? And obviously, yeah, Jake Matthews, this was a big loss, man. This was absolutely a huge loss. This was probably the biggest opportunity for him because when the UFC hands you Neil Magny in the welterweight division, that is basically the fight that you get before you get the biggest, a step into the rankings or some sort of big fight next. Like he was calling for a Gilbert Burns type of fight. That's the type of fight and the name that you get when you can go out there and beat a Neil Magny. So this is a setback for Jake Matthews, man. Right? I feel bad in a sense because you thought you had the submission, you were celebrating, whatever, but at the end of the day, it was the right call kind of in a way by the ref because Neil Magny was not out. Right? But at the same time, you're Neil Magny, why are you going to fade your arm like that? Right? I understand you're in a position, things happen, but that's a bad look when the referee can't see your head and you're caught in a deep submission and the next thing you know, your arm just goes limp. So, but, at the end of the day, if Jake Matthews would have won off of that, that would have been pretty foul, man, right? Because we know Magny wasn't out. So at the end of the day, it was kind of the right move, but are we going to start doing that moving forward in some of these other fights? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how the UFC / the commission, referees, whatever, are going to kind of address this moving forward. Because that sucks for Jake Matthews, man. Thinking you won the fight, coming out, putting on a good second-round performance, and that honestly will definitely, drain your adrenaline and your gas tank. It just will. You thought you won. Next thing you know, you got to go out there and deal with a savvy veteran guy in Neil Magny, who always finds a way, man. Look what he did to Bellato in round 3. Look what he did to Jake Matthews. Look what he did to Dos Santos. And I picked him in that last fight, Magny. But in this one, to me was Jake Matthews' fight to lose. And he lost it. So big setback here, in my opinion, for Jake Matthews. This was a big opportunity that was fumbled. And Neil Magny doing what he does, man, finding a way. Tom Nolan, Charlie Campbell got this one wrong, which I did kind of shitty on the main card, but on the prelims, we basically swept, right? We basically got all the prelims right, but here's the point of this one. Tom Nolan is really good, man, right? And I wrestled with the idea of picking him, but I felt like, look, Tom Nolan's got that tall man defense. His chin is on a platter waiting to be tagged, right? He doesn't do a particularly good job of getting out of the way of counter shots, and Charlie Campbell's got some sting, right? While it's not the most clean striking, he does got some pop in his hands, right? And he throws those good straight shots down the pipe, loops those hooks around the side, and I'm like, for a guy that leans out of range, I'm like, I could see Charlie Campbell catching him, which he did. He hurt him pretty good in the first round, right? Because this was only, I knew the way that these guys were getting out of it after it, I'm like, this ain't going out of the first round, man. So crazy back and forth firefight, right? Tom Nolan was able to, survive, right? And I feel like that was a mistake by Campbell. I know Nolan's good on the ground, but you rocked him, follow him into his guard, posture up, start to land some ground and pound shots. Don't just give him a free stand-up, especially when you're in a dominant position. I understand not wanting to, entertain the ground game with, Tom Nolan, who's good there, but I feel like that might have been a little bit of a mistake, man, especially against a rangy, crafty-ish type of savvy guy on the feet like Nolan. And that spinning back kick, landed right to the gut of Campbell, and I feel like that was, kind of the beginning of the end. We saw Campbell, he was putting on a good poker face, but he was like, oh, man. And then Nolan started to pour it on him and got, I think, his first submission victory in the UFC. And I feel like that's the first time I think that Campbell was submitted as well. So great performance by Tom Nolan, man. Right, and what we saw from Charlie Campbell was what I was anticipating. Forward pressure, not afraid to close the gap, land some hands on him. And that's what he did, but Tom Nolan was just savvy, man. He figured out a way, landed that nasty spinning back kick, was picking him apart, from range with some of the kicks, and then eventually was able to find some shots, was able to gain some respect. And then the submission, great performance by Tom Nolan, man. I like Charlie Campbell, so, I thought that he was going to be able to get that one done, given how hittable Tom Nolan is. Navajo, Stirling, Rodolfo Bellato. We got this one right. I picked Navajo Stirling to win this, and I thought he was going to be able to get a KO here, right? Because Rodolfo Bellato has bad defense. I've said he's like the Reptar of this weight class, just kind of right? Nothing particularly good. Got big old leg kicks, right? Just kind of a meathead style of fighter. Just everything's like, muscled out there. Really not a whole lot of technique. But what we saw from Navajo Stirling is I feel like the expectation of Stirling has been, okay, you train at City Kickboxing, you have a kickboxing background, you should be starching people. You should be looking like a Carlos Ulberg. You should be looking like an Israel Adesanya, and that is not the reality. It's just not. He's decent on the feet, right? And we had a crazy first round here, right? Navajo just kind of bit down, was, slinging some leather, so was Bellato. And I was like, that's kind of a mistake by Stirling, because if Bellato's going to win, I feel like that's almost his only chance is to brawl with him. Right, but then we saw him get back to the technique. We saw him kind of sticking and moving from range. The kicks, the jab, right, started to open up a little bit, but really it was the grappling that I found pretty impressive. Stirling was able to take down Bellato and control him. Right, and I feel like that's kind of what Stirling has that maybe some of these other City Kickboxing guys don't have, right? A lot of them have good takedown defense, but the offensive grappling from Navajo I actually think is pretty impressive. Look what he was able to do to Erslan in the last fight. Look what he was able to do to a guy like Bellato, who I know aren't world beaters, but for a guy that's just a kickboxer, he's a well-rounded MMA fighter, man. That's my biggest takeaway from Stirling is, even me included, we have to kind of stop looking at this guy like, oh, this is Ulberg here, right? He's going to go out there and, keep this thing on the feet the whole time. He's going to set you up, pull you into a counter shot, and knock you out. That's just not really Stirling. He's capable, but that's really not just who he is. He's just kind of a technical wizard out there. He's going to pick you apart, mix things up. If it's getting hairy on the feet, he'll grapple, right? So he's a well-rounded fighter. He's a well-rounded fighter. So this guy's not really going to be knocking people out, I don't think. I mean, if you're not knocking out the competition that's been in front of him, I feel like we're looking at Navajo Stirling as a well-rounded, competitive fighter that can win decisions. That's what it looks like at this point. And I enjoy watching the guy fight because he's very technical, but I'm just calling it like it is, right? That's what I'm seeing right now. Nothing is wowing me with Navajo Stirling, but he's very technical, he's skilled, and maybe with more experience as he's gaining here, maybe those knockout shots will come. But it's hard for me to see that when you got moving heavy bags like a Bellato in front of you, and then now you're going to be fighting guys that actually move really well as you start to get higher into this weight class. So not really a KO guy. So more of a decision merchant at this point. But again, they're going to be some fun fights, man. Navajo's been in some fun fights. He's well-rounded. But this guy that I feel like a lot of people think is going to be this knockout artist, I just don't know if that's who Navajo Stirling is. But that was a very good win over Adolfo Bellato. Biggest win of his career so far for sure. Cam Rowston, Andre Petroski. I got this one right as well. I said Cam Rowston was going to find a knockout in this fight. I didn't understand the Cam Rowston disrespect, right? A lot of people felt like, Petroski was being overlooked and, like Petroski's got this one in the bag, right? Because he's kind of this savvy UFC veteran, was on the Ultimate Fighter. He's going out there and doing what he's doing against Adolfo Vieira. And it's like, okay, Petroski, he's, got that wrestler build, spams calf kicks from the outside. But we've seen that Cam Rowston's really sharpened up the takedown defense. And on the feet, Petroski's got nothing for him. When are you going to switch stances back and forth and just try to hit this guy with calf kicks the whole time? That's your answer? You're not even going to try to wrestle? Just a disaster for Andre Petroski was this matchup. That's why the UFC booked it, I thought. Rowston's, he's difficult to deal with, man, because he's a rangy guy. He's got this long, lanky frame for the weight class, but he's got power. He's not just going to sit there and be Mr. Technical from the outside. He'll scrap. He'll bite down, move forward, and throw some big power shots, and that's what we saw. Right, he's a dangerous guy in this weight class, man. Coming off the Contender Series, wanted to fight on the Perth card. UFC Dana made it happen. Goes out there, gets I don't want to say a big name, but a name. Like, people know who Petroski is, right? Not for being like a great fighter, but he's been around. He's been around long enough to pull off some decent little victories here and there, right? To go out there and KO him in the first round, that's an impressive debut for Cam Rowston, man. I got to keep your eye on here, man. He's got power. His takedown defense has improved throughout his career. And we saw that in this fight, man. He's a tough guy to deal with the range. And going out there and KOing Andre in the first round, I thought that was a very impressive debut for Cam Rowston. And then he hit you with the "you can't see me." Jamie Mullarkey, Rolando Bedoya, I got this one wrong. And in hindsight, with some of these fights, man, like sometimes it's like you feel like and then you're like, but I feel like I'm missing something. So you try to be cute. And you try to, be like, no, I don't. The underdog, I see something here, man. And it's like whenever you do that, then you end up getting it wrong. But then if you overlook the underdog and you're like, yeah, well, the guy's a favorite for a reason, well, then the favorite lets you down, right? Now that's how this card felt to me. But the bottom line is Bedoya, in my opinion, lost this fight more than Jamie Mullarkey wanted. And what I find so disgraceful about Bedoya's performance is I said coming into this that it felt like these guys were probably fighting for their job in the UFC. So if I was your coach and in your corner, or I was the fighter, and I was coming into a fight to where I feel like I'm fighting for my job, wouldn't you probably fight that way? Right? You get taken down and controlled in round number one. Jamie Mullarkey is what seems to me gassed and slowed down quite a bit in round two and round three. He doesn't have crazy power or anything. Why are you not going zombie mode, walking this guy down and doing everything in your power to go out there and try to win the fight? You waited until round three to then pour it on Jamie Mullarkey when you were already down 2-0. This was just such an abysmal performance by Bedoya, man. And yeah, I'm salty because I picked him to win. But I just thought he would be able to go out there in round one. Sure, Mullarkey will mix it up. He's the better technical fighter. But Bedoya training over at Shoot the Box is nothing rubbed off on this guy. Stop throwing leg kicks. He's slow as hell, is Bedoya. We knew that coming in. But Mullarkey slowed down a lot from the grappling, and he fades as the fight goes on. And then Bedoya wants to turn it on in the third round. And no urgency to try to get him out of there. It was just, in my opinion, it was disgraceful from Bedoya. It was a super winnable fight, man. Jamie Mullarkey, in my opinion, did nothing impressive to win this fight. This was about Bedoya, in my opinion, not going out there and doing anything. That's what it felt like. If you feel like you're fighting for your job and that's the performance you want to put up, take your L, man. So I know I'm being harsh here because that's what I saw. I saw a guy that didn't have any urgency to go out there and try to win the fight. And he could have. He absolutely could have. Mullarkey is not dangerous. Bedoya had the output. He was tagging him with the jab. The way he fought in round three, he should have fought that way in round two. And he should have fought that way in round one as well. So Bedoya is going to be regretting that one, man, at the end of the day, but kind of just a clown, in my opinion, is Bedoya to go out there and go out like that. So that's probably his last fight in the UFC. I wouldn't be surprised if it is. So good win from Mullarkey, did what he had to do, but he wasn't impressive. He was sticking and moving, landing some shots. He started to fade. I thought he gassed pretty hard. So to me, it was just a matter of Bedoya, in my opinion, just not going out there and doing anything. Right? I don't know, man. Colby, Thicknesse, and Musasa. People out there, I think that this was maybe a robbery, and I thought it was a super close fight, right? I don't know about robbery, right, because close fights to me aren't robberies, but what my biggest question is, how the hell do you train with Alexander Volkanovski, and it's almost like nothing in terms of the striking is rubbed off on this guy. Colby, Thicknesse, he's terrible on the feet. He is. I think he's one of the worst strikers in this weight class in the UFC. I think he is. And I understand that maybe he was a little compromised here with the leg and all that kind of stuff, but he looks awful on the feet, man. He just looks bad. Herky-jerky, looks inexperienced on the feet, looks super green, like he's super uncomfortable there, and that's a problem because Musasa was exposing something. Blasting his legs. He had no answer for the leg kicks whatsoever, didn't even try to get out of range, didn't try to check, nothing. Was getting his legs, obliterated. I don't know. It was a good performance in terms of grit, heart, digging deep and making something happen. Right, so on that side of it, yeah, we got to see that side of Colby, Thicknesse because he was getting battered around, man, in round 2, right? He spent a lot of energy, right? What could have been or was maybe, I don't know, a 10-8 round in round 1. Was able to chase the takedowns, was able to dominate in round 1, and then feel like he blew a lot of his gas tank. And then he was like trying to battle the fatigue the rest of the fight, right? So having that kind of experience, I think, is going to help Colby moving forward. But the bottom line is if he can't get the takedowns, he is absolutely screwed in this weight class is what I saw. His striking is awful. I guess nothing from Volkanovski on the feet is rubbed off on this guy. It looks bad on the feet, man. It just does. It looks awful. So Musasa was busting him up with the leg kicks. Colby's got to answer some things on the feet, man. He's going to have to get better there. He's going to have to get better there. It's going to be a long day for him in the UFC. I'm just being honest, right? His ground game is decent, but it's not good. It's not elite to where it's like, okay, I can suffer with the striking a little bit because I could go out there and I could get these takedowns, keep people down, control them, and work my game. I'm not seeing that from Colby, Thicknesse. I expected him to win, but I thought he would do it maybe a little bit more handedly than this. I didn't expect a crazy barn burner with Josias Musasa. But shout out to Musasa, man. Guy showed some skills, especially with the leg kicks. Michelle Montague versus Luana Carolina. People are being hard on Michelle. I've seen that online. But the bottom line is I thought it was a really good performance. Now, I want to say right away her striking is bad. It is, right? Her striking defense is atrocious. Her striking offense is atrocious. But that's not why you thought Michelle was going to win the fight. I thought Michelle would take her down. But I can't remember if I said submission or decision because she had 6 victories coming into this. She was 6-0 as a pro. All 6 of them, I believe, were by a rear naked choke. So Luana Carolina, right, decent on the feet, decent tie, right, kind of sloppy, tie technique. But she's a better striker, clearly. Was landing good shots, was able to hurt Montague. That elbow was nasty. But outside of that, Michelle is a solid wrestler, man. And not only that, she's an entertaining grappler to watch. The way she was gliding through positions, transitioning from, the top position to side control, taking the back. You could tell Carolina was like, no, I'm not turtling over. I'm not giving her my back because of all those rear naked choke submissions. So Michelle Montague is a really well-rounded grappler, able to take you down in space, up against the fence, was able to, work. She's got good strength as well. Was able to take her down, dominate on the floor, good ground and pound, wasn't just laying on her, right? Very, very solid ground skills from Michelle Montague. That's what I saw on film, but again, coming into the UFC and showing it, that is a different kind of thing, and to do that against a savvy veteran that's been around in Luana Carolina, I thought that was a good performance, man. Again, it's bad on the feet, it is. Can't defend that. It's bad on the feet. But on the ground, I think she's well-rounded and entertaining to watch on the ground. Flowing from position to position, a good understanding with the jiu-jitsu game, with the wrestling, blending it all together with good ground and pound. That was a good win for Michelle Montague. Got to fix the striking, man, because if she can't get the fight to the floor, it's going to be a problem for her. Brando Pericic versus Ellison. I picked Brando to win this fight by KO. And look, we finally have a guy that's not a blob in this weight class, man. That is a promising guy to watch, man. Right? Over at City Kickboxing, he's got kickboxing experience. Right? We've seen throughout, watching his fights, coming into this one, right? He's improved his ground game. His ground game seems to be pretty good. We saw it a little bit in this fight. But it's the striking. It's the power. You hear these guys from CKB saying, listen, when this guy's the hardest hitter we got around, man. Like, he's got some serious power, sets his shots up well, And when he was tagging Ellison, I mean, you could just see the effect, man. And he put him out bad to where that was a worrisome type of KO where it was taking Ellison a while to kind of get back to his feet and stuff. So, that stuff is scary, man, with the fight game. But that also speaks to the power of Brando, man. This guy hits hard. He moves in and out well. He's clearly not just some fat blob in this weight class, like I said, coming into this. I like his striking, man. He's a dangerous guy to watch out for here. Right? I'm not saying he's going to be a world champ or anything, but he's clearly someone that has shown that he could possibly be a contender in this weight class. That was a very good UFC debut. Last but not least, Alexia Thainara versus Loma Lukbunme. I picked Alexia to win this fight by decision, and look, give her a ranked opponent at this point, right? She is a physical problem for people in this weight class, right? She's got good strength, good grappling, can dominate you on the ground. She's strong. She has a good understanding with her ground skills. And then on the feet, I mean, it's not super technical, but she's got some power, right? She kind of throws that leg kick out there, wings some shots, right? But she can kind of get away with that because of her physicality and the threat of the takedown. That's what we saw in this fight. And that's what I was afraid of for Loma, right? She's got the beautiful tie technique, the sharp elbows. She was trying to catch Alexia on the way in with those, but the reality is Loma is a decision merchant. She's not someone that really has the capability to win the fight. I know Alexia's won her fair share of decisions as well, but she has the grappling threat with the submission game where we've seen her finish the fight before. But we saw the improvements from Loma on the ground. I didn't expect Alexia to be able to get her out of there, but it was a dominant performance, man. She's physical, she's strong, she's got a well-rounded skill set, and I think that she has definitely earned the opportunity to fight someone in the rankings at this point. So that is UFC Perth, man. Big win for Carlos Ulberg. I think he should get the title shot next. That was a crazy win over a name like Dominick Reyes. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.